What's up, guys? So let's go ahead and start off with the relay or the 4-pin relay. Let me just show you so there's actually 4 pins at the bottom. So they're actually labeled from 87, 85, 86, and 30. So they are oriented in a certain way, so there's no way you can plug it in incorrectly, as you can see. So just remember there's going to be like a cross pattern, one on top, one at the bottom, one on the left, and one on the right. So you just want to keep that in mind. So by the way, let me show you the circuit diagram for this mini driving light project that we will be doing today. Here it is. So feel free to pause anytime or always go back to this portion of the video in case you're lost at some point. So let me just show you these wires. This will be the number 30 wires. This will be the number 85, number 86, and then the number 87 wires. Now these pink wires here, you can go ahead and cut them out. You don't need these wires because you only need the 4 connections. So you can either cut them out or pull them out later, just to avoid getting confused. So we can just set that aside for now. So first, this will be the 86 and 85 connections. So we'll have to combine that, and we will be using this as the ground, like so. And then this will be the number 30 connections. Combine both of these as well, and that will be for our positive connection that goes to the battery. Now these two here, these will be the 85 and 86. Let me just cut off both of these pink wires because it's getting in the way. Okay, that should be good. Now these are the connections that we'll have to extend. So this is the one for the positive wire, goes directly to the battery. This is the number 86 or relay 86, goes directly to the switch for the high beam. And this is relay 85, goes directly to the switch for the low beam. And this is the high beam that goes directly to the LED driver, and the low beam for the LED driver for the relay 87 wires. So as you can see, we're almost ready to do some soldering. So we'll start with the negative or the ground wire. So I've already placed the connections, the shrink tubes. So I already combined the number 86 and 85 wires for the ground. So this will go directly to either the negative terminal on the battery, or to any available ground source on the motorbike's chassis. So the other end, we should place an eyelet terminal on the other end. So we'll just strip the wire. Once that's done, just prepare it, and then grab some eyelet terminals, like so. By the way, guys, at this point I have already an idea or a rough estimate on how long the wires should be. In my case, since I'm using our bike is the GSX 150. So I've cut the wires for approximately a meter. So it depends whether if you're using a backbone or an underbone motorcycle. Based on the make and model of your motorcycle, the length of the wire or the cables might differ. So next up will be the positive terminal or the positive connection from the relay 30 or the number 30 connection coming from the relay, and then the other end should go straight to a fuse holder with a 10 amp fuse. So that will gonna be safer, just in case anything goes wrong. The 10 amp fuse will gonna blue instead of any other parts of our connections. So that's done. Okay, let's prepare the endpoints for the connection for our fuse box or fuse holder. By the way, guys, soldering is optional, so but for me, it is the connection will be much stronger and more stable if you solder it, and also the enforcement of these shrink tubes for insulation and for protection as well. So instead of just using the trusty electrical tape, it is much faster and it is much secure when you use these string tubes. So we're done with the connection from the relay 30 to the battery positive terminal. Now next up will be the connections for the switch or for the three-way switch, the 86 and the 85. So this will be for the high beam and the low beam that goes directly to our three-way switch. So at this point, I'm just gonna place some masking tape or some white tape and just label it with the letter L and the letter H for low and high. So this corresponds for the low beam and the high beam relay, so we won't get confused. So we'll start with the high beam, relay 86. We'll have to extend the wire as well, and the other end should go directly to the high beam on the switch. So once everything's secured, we'll move to the relay 85 for the low beam on the switch. Okay, next up will be the low and high beam that goes directly to the LED driver. So we got two cables. We're gonna start off with the low beam for the LED driver, and the second will be the high beam for the LED driver. Because the LED driver have 3 wires or 3 terminals in total. One for the low beam, second for the high beam, and third for the ground. Okay, so we're almost done. Not too shabby. So you can see how neat the connections are using these shrink tubes. Makes a lot of difference. So this is for the ground. That goes for the positive terminal for the battery with a 10 amp fuse. And this one goes to the low beam on the switch, and then the high beam on the switch. So we're almost done. So we're just gonna cover this up with some electrical tape all throughout the cable. So moving on with the LED drivers. So we're just gonna untie these. So this end goes directly to the LED lamps, and then the other end has these 3 wires, colored black, red, and yellow. So black goes to ground, yellow is for the high beam, and red is for the low beam. So we're just gonna attach both of these LED drivers like so, and we're just gonna wrap it up with some electrical tape, because it will be much easier for us to do the cable management later on, and it'll be more organized once we are about to install it on our bike. So we're just gonna have to wrap up these wires as well. So right now we're just preparing the tips of these wires for the connection to the relay. So again, that's gonna be the relay 85 and relay 86 connections for the low and high beam. So yellow goes to yellow, red goes to red, and black goes to black. So we'll just combine all 3 connections. So here is the almost finished product. So don't get confused with the messy wiring. However, I've just covered up some of the parts of the cables just to make it much organized. But let me just show you. So here's our relay, our two 4-pin relays for the high and low. So I've just covered out all the wires so that everything will get routed to one end. As you can see, all tucked up. And I've just added some additional white tapes on each cable so I don't get confused and I can always keep track of them, as you can see. So here's the fuse that goes to the positive lead on the battery. Again, if any time during this video if you get confused or if you got lost, feel free to go back to that diagram that I showed you earlier. So that's the 87 terminals from the relay that goes directly to the LED driver, and this cable goes directly to the LED bulbs or the LED lights. So these cable here, these are the ones coming from the 85 and 86 relay. So this goes directly to the low beam on the switch, and this goes directly to the high beam on the switch. So that's 85 and 86 relay connections. So as you can see, right now we're gonna do a test of all the connections just to make sure that everything is working before we actually install it, because it's gonna be really hard to fix anything once we installed it. If anything goes wrong or if anything gets faulty or if we have any bad connection, it's going to be really hard. So if in case we need to make any adjustments, this will be the best time for us to test it out. So now everything's connected, but right now I've just connected the ground to this available nut on the bike's chassis. So as you can see, here's the cables. So this is the cable that goes directly to or coming from the 87 relays that goes directly to the LED lamps or to the LED driver, which are connected to the LED lamps, as you can see already mounted here at the bottom of the headlight. Here's the three-way switch. It's already just hanging in there. And then here's the connections coming from the relay 85 and 86. I've just labeled it up. As you can see, 85 goes to the low beam on the switch, and 86 goes to the high beam on the switch. So these are the two. So one goes to the low beam and the other one goes to the high beam. Like so. So the third one, that should go directly to the 12-volt ignition line. So I've just routed a cable and then tapped it in the ignition line. So the way, or I've just checked the ignition line. It depends on your motorbike or the make and model. So you just want to be very careful at this point, because you don't want to make a mistake of tapping this cable on any other incorrect cable aside from the ignition line, because it can really hurt or mess up your wiring really bad. So the way I checked it is, this is the ignition switch, so just follow this cable, and the other end of this cable goes directly to the terminal for the ignition line. So as you can see, the ignition switch is turned off, If you press the switch for the LED lights, nothing happens. See? So that makes it safer in case someone tries to mess around or play with the switch for the LED lamp. So let's turn on the ignition key this time, and then the ignition or the switch for the LED lamp should now work for the low beam and then the high beam. The middle button is to turn it off, and the one on top is for the high beam. Cool, so everything seems to be working right now. That's the low beam, all white, and then the high beam, white and yellow. So at this point, everything seems to be working as normal. So we can go ahead and start removing the side fairings for this bike, so we can start routing the cables or doing some cable management. We'll just have to remove these 3 screws with an Allen wrench. So we can, well, we don't need to remove the entire fairing, we just need to make an opening. So that will be too much work. As long as we can reach everything, that should be good enough. So at this point, just be very, very careful when it comes to removing the side fairings, because you can really break the clips if you're not gentle enough. So the cable ties will come in handy at this point. Just make sure that you keep the LED driver, even the cables, away from the engine, just to avoid it from getting damaged. If it, you know, if the engine gets too warm, because it can really melt the cables. So I'm just making sure that it's out of the way, and then once it's all connected, as you can see, everything is tucked in. I've ended up covering almost everything with the electrical tape, just leaving the parts that I will most likely need access in the future for any kind of maintenance or replacement, like replacing the relays if in case anything gets busted, or even the fuse that I've installed. So you can just put it in there, and all the cables are all routed inside this way. The 12-volt ignition goes to the ignition line underneath the tank, and then on the other side, here's the cabling for the 3-way switch. Make sure there's enough slack, just so the cables won't get damaged. As you can see, it's all routed for the switch mounted at the center of our handlebar. Then here's the 2 LED lamps. So right now I'm just testing the cable for the LED lamps, make sure it's not getting stretched out or anything. Let's just test it one more time. With the ignition key on. Everything seems to be working. Okay, low beam, and then the high beam. That's looking good. So we're gonna wait until it gets dark, and we'll test out the performance of our mini driving lights. So it's already almost midnight. So this is the stock low beam for our headlights, and then let's see the difference. Wow, this is the low beam for the mini driving lights, and then the high beam. So again, the low beam is the one that has, there you go, the one with the white one, all white, and then the high beam is the one with the yellow on top. There's a huge difference. I don't think I'll need to further explain. Wow. Wow, the difference in clarity is almost night and day. Well, not necessarily, but you get a point, right? Huge improvement. Wow. It's a success. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. So now I'm going to show you a montage on how our new mini driving lights looks on the bike.